Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Welcome, Mary Parker. I am turning the floor over to you now.
Thank you, Lauren. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to be here today just to kind of talk to y'all about nutrition and the common questions, myths, and misconceptions that we all may have. So there are, obviously we all have access to the internet, and with that kind of comes a lot of research and wanting to put yourself in the best position for treatment. And so the biggest thing is that we're going to kind of talk about today is like how to navigate what's a myth, what's a fact, and then kind of I'm going to go over some commonly asked questions and misconceptions that kind of I've seen over the years that just to help y'all get accurate information. So we're going to talk about, does sugar feed cancer? Do I need to eat organic foods? Are soy foods safe? And should I follow an alkaline diet or drink alkaline water? So first off, does sugar feed cancer? So the claim is that sugar feeds cancer. Where that comes from is that all cells in our body, including cancer cells, so whether it's a good cell or a bad cell, use sugar, which is known as glucose, for energy. Sugar comes from all carbohydrate foods. So that's your starchy vegetables, fruits, whole grains, dairy, or beans. All of those have carbohydrates in them. But what do carbohydrates do? Carbohydrates are the primary energy source. Your body takes the carbohydrates and breaks them down to make glucose. The glucose is what feeds your cells to give you energy to function. There are 3 types of carbohydrates. So over on the right-hand slide, you can see kind of on a nutrition label where the total carbohydrates are. And then it's also got a section called dietary fiber, your total sugars, and some stuff you may see where it has added sugars. So the total carbohydrates is going to be all 3 types of carbohydrates that you can find in a product. It's important when you're looking at a label that if you find something that's potentially higher in dietary fiber, because the fiber is going to be good for heart health and GI function. And then typically it's that added sugars, the 10 grams on this label, but the added sugar section that you want to try to be mindful of. When it comes to actually the question, does sugar feed cancer? We can't really, there's no way to control which cells get sugar for energy. So if we're not providing sugar or carbohydrates through our diet, then our bodies have to make glucose somehow. So what your body does is it ends up breaking down fat and protein to meet the needs of your cells. So if your body ends up running in this carbohydrate deficit and not getting enough glucose, then you're going to end up losing muscle mass. And when you lose muscle mass, that can also cause you to have a weakened immune system. So those are 2 things that we obviously don't want to do, because with muscle loss, that has its consequences. And then as you're going through cancer treatment, you typically, or some people do, experience a weakened immune system anyways from your treatments. So we don't want to compound that and make our immune system even weaker. So really, there's no particular reason why sugar feeds cancer cells any more than sugar feeds all cells. The relationship kind of for where people get the theory that sugar feeds cancer is it is still a good idea to limit eating your simple sugars, or what we call like non-nutritive sugars. So those would be like foods that have added sugars, you know, and I'm not saying to cut these out, but desserts, sugar sweetened beverages, candy, all that kind of stuff. Because when we eat sugar, even carbohydrates or simple sugar, our bodies produce insulin because it wants to regulate your blood sugar levels. Insulin is a hormone made by your pancreas. Your pancreas helps sugar enter the cell to be used as energy. It also takes sugar to your liver to be stored later. So if you're eating like simple non-nutritive sugars in excess, then that can lead to excess fat, basically. When we have excess fat consumption, that can lead to overweight and obesity. And it's actually that overweight and obesity's relationship to increasing your risk of cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. So you don't want to cut out your complex carbohydrates, which would be your starchy vegetables, fruits, whole grains, dairy, because all of those are very healthy and nutritious for you, containing vitamins, minerals. Fiber actually helps to control your blood sugar levels. So it's really about just being mindful of your consumption of simple or non-nutritive sugars if you're kind of looking for a healthy change. So I've kind of talked about this a little bit, but what should you do? Don't avoid all carbohydrates, like I said. The best sources for healthy complex carbs are fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. These foods are known for helping to fight cancer. Pairing when making a plate or making a meal or making a snack, it's important to have other foods on the plate that have protein, fat, or fiber. So basically, if you have protein, healthy fat, and fiber when eating foods that contain carbohydrates, it helps to balance things out. And as you can see, this example would be instead of having 2 pieces of fruit, have 1 piece of fruit. And for instance, like instead of having 2 bananas, you could have a small banana and a handful of nuts. So that just helps to balance it out. Or an apple with some cheese, or even a banana and peanut butter would be an example, just to kind of help make things balanced. Complex carbohydrates are broken down into basic sugars before they're absorbed, but the digestive process is slower. So they don't cause the immediate blood sugar spike that your simple sugars can cause. So simple carbohydrates are digested quickly and more likely to cause a spike in your blood sugar. These are the things that potentially, if consumed in excess, can increase your weight and risk for diabetes, heart disease, or high cholesterol. The complex carbs on the right-hand side are less likely to cause a spike in your blood sugar due to the time it takes to digest. They also have vitamins, minerals, and fiber. So these are kind of the complex carbs can be kind of thought as, your cancer-fighting fruits, vegetables, whole grains in the diet. So that's why it's important. Again, whenever you do like a meal or a snack, just to make sure it's balanced with all of your different food groups. There are, we've kind of talked a lot about this, but sugars in general, we have your naturally occurring sugars that are found in milk, fresh fruits. And then we have your added sugars, which are found in sweets, sodas. The body can't tell the difference between natural or added because they all ultimately get broken down. But again, it's your naturally occurring sugars found in like fruits, starchy vegetables, whole grains, they have those vitamins, minerals, and fiber that your added sugars do not have. Added sugar, we talked about the little part, if you recall, on the food ingredient label. These are just some other names that you might see on an ingredient: agave nectar, cane syrup or corn syrup, dextrose, fructose or sucrose, honey, molasses, or sugar. So these would be kind of terms that you might find in a ingredient list to kind of tell you that this is where your added sugar is coming from. And then if you really want to know specifics, the American Heart Association recommends no more than 6¼ teaspoons of added sugar a day for women, and no more than 9 teaspoons of added sugar a day for men. So this was the American Heart Association's recommendations on just, reducing cardiovascular risk, obesity, things like that. And again, these are just the added sugars. This is not taking into account your natural sugars from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, or beans. So this would just be if you are going to have like a little bar or something, then you would just, if you wanted to know what to look out for, that would kind of be the recommended no more teaspoons per day. So again, back to the label, there are ways that you can watch your added sugars, being mindful of adding sugar to coffee or tea. And again, just kind of taking a glance at the label. For instance, this food product has 12 total grams of sugar, so 10 of those are added. So sometimes you can see something may have more natural sugar in it than added sugars. And then this statistic at the bottom is kind of eye-opening, just that the average American eats about 22 teaspoons of added sugar per day, which adds up to about 70 pounds of added sugar per year. So a lot of people say, well, I get what you're saying, but why am I drinking a carbohydrate beverage before I do my PET scan and then the PET scan lights up? So the easiest kind of way to think about it is it's not the actual glucose is reaching the cancer cells, but it's the hyperactivity. So the cancer cell has a higher metabolic rate that's detected on the PET scan. So they're actually looking at like the metabolic rate and that hyperactivity of the cancer cells on the PET scan, instead of it being as simple as like, oh, I'm drinking this carb beverage and now my PET scan's lighting up. So a helpful comparison, cells use sugar the way cars use gas. Normal cells use a reasonable amount, and cancer cells are gas guzzlers. So during cell division, more glucose is used, much like accelerating cars use more gas. After cell division, it goes more back to an idling state using less glucose. Cancer cells are like cars stuck with your foot to the gas pedal. So you're using glucose at a much higher rate in your cancer cells because they're constantly dividing at a much faster rate than normal cells. So kind of to put everything kind of summarized, no single food or food component, including sugar, can cause cancer by itself, nor can it protect you against cancer by itself. There's insufficient evidence to show a link between sugar intake and cancer growth. Avoiding sugar completely will not slow cancer growth. Eating a lot of high sugar foods could mean an excess calories to your diet, which leads to weight gain and excess body fat. And it's actually obesity that increases the risk of 11 common cancers. But on the other side, there's strong evidence that a diet that's rich in plant foods like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans actually lower your risk for many cancers and increase overall health. So it's really about finding that balanced diet and just being mindful of how often you eat foods with added sugars, and also try to stay as active as you can. So kind of while we were talking about, fruits and vegetables, a big question that we get is, well, do I need to eat organic food? So the claim is that organic food is better than non-organic food. And meaning better, I take it as like healthier, more nutritious, richer in vitamins and minerals. But really, there's no strong evidence that organic fruits and vegetables can provide more protection against cancer than conventional foods. So this just means that there's no consistent evidence that organic food is any more nutritious than conventionally grown. And that's talking about like, just because something's organic doesn't mean that it's higher in vitamins, minerals, or other nutrients or fiber. Those amounts are going to be the same, whether it's organic or conventionally grown. So this table just kind of lays out the difference between conventional and organic. The conventional side is going to have chemical fertilizers, insecticides, herbicides to manage weed. From like a animal perspective, those animals would have potentially been given antibiotics, growth hormones, or medication to prevent disease in the animals. Organic, again, using more like manure or compost versus a natural fertilizer, using like insects and birds in a field to help control pests, rotating crops to help manage weed and soil management. And then again, from like an animal perspective, using more preventative measures, not necessarily giving any antibiotic or medical intervention, using organic feed, and having sometimes different greater outdoor access compared to conventional farm animals. So why, if we're talking about, well, they have the same vitamins and minerals, why would you choose organic? So with organic foods, you're going to have a lower pesticide residue on the produce itself, lower amounts of like man-made food additives. Organic typically is going to have better stewardship of natural resources, really utilizing land and water versus manipulating it. And also, just kind of considering humans' interaction and humans' impact on nature and why people would prefer organic. So at the grocery store, you may see a bunch of different ingredient labels, kind of, there's different ones out there. And the thing is, it can be confusing to try to navigate, well, what does this mean? So this table breaks it down. If it has a label of, this all comes from the USDA National Organic Program, by the way. 100% organic means all ingredients are certified organic. So every little component is. If it's just organic, then that means at least 95% of the ingredients are organic. Made with organic means 70% of the ingredients are organic. And then finally, organic ingredients on the label just means that less than 70% of the ingredients are certified organic. So it can be tricky when you're looking at a label or a product face and it says one thing. So if you're truly looking for something that's 100% organic, then it should say 100% organic on the label. So some people prefer to buy organic, and that is totally fine. The biggest thing that it can be more expensive to shop organic than it is conventional. So just know that no matter if you're choosing organic or conventional foods, it's the wide variety of plant foods in addition to being active and working on a healthy weight. That's what really matters. So, I don't want I don't ever want anybody to feel like they have to buy organic, because when they're financially not able to. So just know that there are kind of, for instance, if you're going to peel the outside of the apple, or if you're going to peel the outside of the onion, or you're going to peel the outside, anything that you aren't going to eat the peel on, that's something that, you may not necessarily have to buy organic because you aren't going to eat the outside of it. But something like lettuce or berries or, stuff like that, that you're definitely going to eat the whole fruit or vegetable, and you wanted to start buying something organic, like that may be a starting point for you. So those are just some kind of things to keep in mind as well. So the third thing we're going to talk about is soy safe. The claim is that soy foods can increase cancer risk, and specifically estrogen-sensitive cancers should avoid soy foods. The current consensus among health experts who study soy is that breast cancer survivors can safely eat these foods. Research suggests that soy is protective against breast cancer recurrence. Unfortunately, there still needs to be more research with other hormone-related cancers like endometrial and ovarian. But the studies that are there say that soy is okay for these women as well. What we are where the confusion kind of starts is when we talk about phytoestrogens. So isoflavones are some nutrients in soy, and they have chemical structures that look like estrogen. That's kind of how you got like the phytoestrogen term. But isoflavones are not the same thing as female estrogen. They bind differently to estrogen receptors, and they function differently. So just because they kind of look the same doesn't mean that they act the same in the body. And again, this was like prior to the research that's been done. Avoidance was talked about because there just wasn't there was a misunderstanding about the potential effects of those. So now we have those studies of survivors of breast and prostate cancer showing no harmful effects. So we talked about the first two ones. I think we're talking about, let me see what I was trying to find. Okay. So we're talking about basically the research says that if you eat soy and you've eaten soy prior to breast cancer diagnosis, then you're fine to continue eating soy after diagnosis. This was mainly talking about like your whole food forms of soy. So that'd be like tofu, soy milk, edamame, tempeh, those kind of whole forms of soy. We aren't necessarily talking about your processed soy products like your soy protein isolates and things like that. We're talking about like actual whole food forms of soy. So the second to last bullet point talked about several large, so thousands of women studies show that compared with women who do not eat soy, women who regularly eat soy have a lower breast cancer risk. This could be from the fact that incorporating soy, maybe you have a higher plant-based diet, you know, and then the other studies that have been done talk about that breast cancer survivors who consume soy foods have a lower risk of recurrence. So again, you know, is it because you're eating more of a plant-based diet compared to somebody who doesn't incorporate soy? They are observational studies, so it is possible that the true connection with better breast health isn't soy, but it's something else that's related to eating soy. And this is kind of what I was talking about. You know, it may be that women who eat soy foods eat less fried food and more vegetables. They may exercise more. So because they're observational studies, it hasn't been totally nailed down, but just know that you're safe to eat soy if you have done so, or you want to incorporate that kind of plant-based food into your diet. So, because of the concern around phytoestrogens, some people have recommended that women taking tamoxifen should avoid soy. Ongoing research supports the opposite, meaning that soy foods appear to enhance or improve the breast cancer blocking actions of tamoxifen. So a review of studies published in 2019, it pulled 330,000 human participants, found that soy protein intake was associated with a decreased risk in the mortality of breast cancer. So these are all kind of the research studies that have been done, kind of looking at soy's correlation with breast cancer. So we talk about soy consumption safe. So the study said moderate consumption is safe, which is the equivalent of 1 to 2 standard servings a day. And this is of those, and then specifically of whole soy foods like tofu, soy milk, edamame, and soy nuts. So your serving would be like 1/3 cup of tofu, 3 ounces, is about the size of a deck of cards, 1/2 cup of edamame, a cup of milk. So again, even if you went up to 3 servings a day, and consumed in, the study was done in Asian population, but it didn't increase your risk of breast cancer risk. So, again, it's kind of back to focusing on your whole food versions of soy. I do encourage people, and this is just a personal thing, but just to be mindful of like your processed soy foods, like soy protein isolates, things like that. I think there's still more research to be had with those impacts on the body, but your whole forms of soy are fine. So finally, we're going to talk about the alkaline diet. And the alkaline diet claim, acidic foods can alter the body's pH balance and promote cancer. It was based on a theory that eating certain foods will change your body's pH level. This was done in lab studies. It was done in like a little petri dish that looked at putting cancer cell in a petri dish in an acidic or low pH environment, caused the cancer cells to thrive. Then they took the same study, same cancer cells, put them in a petri dish, made that environment a high pH level, and the cancer cells couldn't survive. So again, there were lab studies that, yes, they are accurate when applied to cells in an isolated lab, but it's impossible to create a less acidic, less cancer-friendly environment in the human body. I don't know if anybody took like physiology or anything like that, but acid-base balance in your body is tightly controlled by several mechanisms, including the kidneys and the respiratory system. When your kidney functions normal, the body will maintain its pH balance regardless of diet. So if you try to intentionally shift your body's pH, then you're kind of trying to undo what your what your body naturally wants to do. So that's kind of the danger of trying to shift your body's pH, because it can cause kidney failure. It can cause respiratory issues. So really, if you look at how, I'll go back to this slide. If you look at how foods are broken down when they're digested, your kind of nutrient rich, cancer fighting foods are ones that kind of, as they're broken down, are more acidic in nature. Like lean protein, fruits, vegetables, those when they're digested and broken down in the body, they're a little more alkaline in nature. But like your high fat foods, fried foods, foods that are higher in added sugars, when those are broken down by the body, those are broken down to be a little more acidic in nature. So it's not necessarily just the pH scale, but there's like a bigger thought to that. And but I do understand that like alkaline water is available on the shelf. Most alkaline water is bottled water, but it has more mineral content in it. I have had patients who say, I really don't like drinking water, but alkaline water tastes a little bit better to me, and so I'm able to drink more of it, and that's fine. But just drinking alkaline water itself won't change the pH of your blood. And there's really no evidence that drinking it has any medical value. So again, like it's fine if you're drinking it because you kind of like the taste, you want some extra minerals, maybe some extra electrolytes because you just need those. But to do it to try to intentionally shift your body's pH, it's not going to happen. So again, what you can have an impact on your cancer risk, but it's really the acidity and alkalinity of the foods isn't really important. It's just mainly that you want to focus on eating a variety of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains and beans that do have important phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, and fiber that are positive for your health. You want to try to limit your red meat and processed meats. Red meat to no more than a pound a week, just because those red and processed meats have been linked to increasing your risk for certain types of cancer. And again, if you drink alcohol, only do so in moderation, because again, alcohol consumption has been linked to specific types of cancers, and also it increases inflammation in the body. So there are ways that you can do positive, healthy things in your diet that we actually know have good results. So that's kind of some of those, I think. Yeah, so I do have, that's it for y'all listening to me talk. There are some resources at the end. I really like the American Institute for Cancer Research. I'll put it in the chat. It's www. And I see your questions. Thank you for AICR.org. AICR.org is a really good reference for these kind of things. And then that's kind of where we got, some of the stuff. So, but a lot of this came from the AICR. So I would definitely, if you want some more research on things to do, that'd be a great resource if you want to kind of do some more reading for yourself.
Thank you all for joining us. Mary Parker, thank you for another informational program. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.